All right, sounds good.
I got you a bigger.
Okay, it's time to get started.
but hold on just a minute. Okay, I'm going to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Lawton City Council to order. Please stand for the invocation by Pastor Tony Christie of Lawton First Baptist Church and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Thank you, Mayor. Let's bow in prayer. Father, we thank you for this beautiful day that you've given us to enjoy. And Father, for this time of proceedings and decisions, we ask for your guidance, your leadership. God, may we look to you for your direction. God, thank you for these men and women who are serving in their different wards and areas. Thank you for our mayor. Father, I pray that you would lift each one of them up, encourage them in the work as they serve this great city. And Father, we thank you for your kindness, your goodness. God, thank you that you love us the way you do. We look to you each and every day, God, for salvation, but also, God, for your leadership and guidance and strength. And for that we ask today, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please call the roll. Thank you, Pastor.
Hankins, Harris, Chapman, Burke, Hampton, Fortenbaugh, Johnson, Warren.
Okay, and already we jump to the reports by the mayor and city council, and we'll start with Ward 1.
Everything's going fine in Ward 1, trying to answer all the questions and the concerns when people call, but we're doing good.
All right, great. Ward 2.
Yes, I just want to start by saying thanks to the different AMBUCS clubs in town that went out and built a wheelchair ramp this weekend for the Raythongs so that that young man can get in and out of his house and to his medical procedures and stuff. It was a hot day, but and I wanted to thank Councilwoman Chapman for coming out and giving us some support during that time. It's one of her constituents, and it was a really great thing to see happen.
And Ward 3.
Well, if you have nothing to do next Saturday at 10 a.m., Mayor Booker and I and one other will be judging the Pickle Fest. So make sure you come out to the farmer's market.
Connoisseur of pickles. And Ward 5.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to commend and say thank you to Michael and all his crew that put together the Lawton birthday celebration. If you didn't have a chance to make it out there, it was really excellent. And all of us that attended, I'm sure, enjoyed that. So with that said, happy birthday belated to the city of Lawton.
All right, Ward 6.
I'm not volunteering for the pickle competition, but bringing up the farmer's market, it's amazing. I went there last Saturday. I got there a little late, but there was no parking anywhere, which is good. They were cleaned out of a lot of items. It's working very well, so I'm very glad for that.
Thank you for bringing that up. There is extra parking at the library and out on the front street, but most people do tend to park in Shepler Park there. Thank you. Mr. Warren.
I would echo Councilman Hampton on kudos to the staff, everyone involved in the birthday celebration at McMahon. I would also like to say thank you, early thank you, to the crew that's putting the sidewalk in on Gore Boulevard between 53rd and 67th. They're up to Compass now, and so the next leg onto 67th will go pretty fast. I would expect that to be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks for sure. And then we can start on 53rd Street North, hopefully. it's still hot out there. Everybody be careful. Drink lots of water.
Colonel P.
Sure, just like to say thank you so much for the invitation last week and attending the birthday. That was a fantastic event. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. We're glad you came. Appreciate you being there. And I'm going to tell you, the Arts and Humanities Department continues to be in the spotlight. And we just go from one event to another of where they shine. And I appreciate them so much and all the work they did. And that group has some employees, but they have to organize a bunch of volunteers for everything they do. They do a great job, and I appreciate them so much. Let's move on to audience participation. Anyone having an item of business to present to the City Council that does not appear on the agenda, please come forward at this time. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted with one motion. Should discussion be desired on an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda prior to action and considered separately. Council, at this time, I did not have any request to pull any items on the consent agenda.
With that being said, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? Please vote. And the motion carries 7-0. That moves us to our first business item, which is item number 18. Consider accepting the FY 2021 Performator, a financial statement analysis report of the City of Lawton as presented by Frank Crawford of Crawford and Associates. And you don't look like Frank. Oh. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not Frank Crawford. No, he is here, though.
Starting to resemble each other as time continues.
Yeah, I know. When I first met Frank, he had hair. I wanted to kind of preface this by saying this is our 2021 fiscal year Performator. We have just ended 2022. So this is one of the reasons that we have been tightening up some of our reporting requirements from our entities to be able to get this done in a more timely manner. Frank?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, for talking about everybody's favorite subject, which is government accounting. I know it's my subject, my favorite subject, but probably not everyone else's. As Joe Don had said, within the last month, your annual financial statement report audit would have been issued for fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. Once that audit is finalized and issues, it allows me to kind of take the 118-page document, which is very difficult to read if you're trying to figure out what the numbers mean, and try to summarize it into something that makes a little bit more sense. And so every year we've been tracking your financial health and success on what we call our Performator scale, which is simply if someone were to ask, financially, how are we doing on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being excellent financial health and success and a 1 or a 0 being poor, where do we fall? That seems to be a scale that's much easier to understand than the 118-page audit. And so that's the booklet that you see in front of you, either printed and bound or electronically provided to you earlier. It only has about 25 pages in it and not a lot of numbers, which is always a pleasant thing if you're not an accountant and enjoy those numbers. I will flip you to page 5, which is where the summary starts. And this is the overall results page, and you can see that we've been tracking this for a good almost 10 years now, and probably even tracking it longer than that. I just can't fit 10 years or more on one page without it being unreadable. So we've been kind of watching your financial health and success. So your overall score for this fiscal year ending June 30, 21 was a 7.5. It was 7.5 the year before, and 2 years ago it was a 7.4. What that means is we've been relatively consistent over 3 years, and that's probably because we've had real good financial performance during those years, which has kind of helped our health position a little bit. And so 7.5 is a good score. The highest score I saw this year was an 8.4-ish, and it happened once, so that kind of lets you know that not many governments get into the 8s. I've only had one government in 22 years score in the 9s, and that was a 9.1, and that happened about 6 years ago, and it was a government in Georgia as opposed to in Oklahoma. So scale-wise, what a 7.5 means is we are well above satisfactory in the overall score. However, I can take that overall score and I can break it into components, because since we're measuring really 3 different things, we're measuring the health of the government, as I said, financially. We're measuring performance, whether we had a good year or a bad year. And I'm also measuring what I call capability, or another word for that is called sustainability. Do we have the ability to maintain the level of services that we're providing off the revenue base and the debt bases that we have? And so if you look to the right, what you can kind of see is I break that 7.5 down into 3 different scores. If you look at financial position, that's a fancy way of saying that's our health score. Our financial position is a 6.3. 5 is what I consider to be satisfactory, so a 6.3 is above satisfactory. Really, our best score this year was in performance. We had a very good performance year, meaning revenues came in like we thought they would or better than what we thought they would. Expenses came in at less than what we estimated. Therefore, the combination of those 2 things made you have nearly a perfect score on the level of performance. As far as our capability, that kind of measures how much of our revenue streams we control, whether we've maxed out our debt obligations or whether we still have room to issue more debt. And we score a 6.0. Again, anything above a 5 is very satisfactory. Those scores don't really change very much, the capability scores from year to year. I think last year you were around a 6.2. I think you issued a little more debt this year. That's why that score lowered to a 6. Overall, those basically average to that 7.5, although it won't average exactly if you were to do the math right now, because each one of these factors have a different weight, different importance than others. And so some are weighted a little bit more heavy than others. That's kind of the overall score, but over the next several pages, what you see are ratios that we talk about that we test based on the audited numbers to determine whether or not some of these ratios are in good shape, bad shape, or just okay shape. There's a couple of things that I want to point out, and I'll start at page 8, although I just noticed I didn't color the page numbers very well, so they're in the bottom right corner in gray on top of a dark blue, so it takes a little bit of strain to see it. The first score I'm going to talk about is not a very good one. Obviously, you can kind of see the score at the bottom right. If it's in red, that's not good. If it's in yellow, that's okay. If it's in green, that means it's really good. Our level of unrestricted net position at the overall governmental level isn't very good. It's actually in a negative position. However, there's an explanation for that. A few years ago, the state firefighters' pension system got swept into our local financial statements. In other words, an accounting rule change basically allowed the state's unfunded liabilities to be, instead of shown at the state level, to be pushed down to each individual government that participates. Since we have a very large fire department and that fire pension system is woefully underfunded, only about 65% funded, it pushed about a $33 million liability down to your level. What that means is you have a liability in your financials for $33 million and no asset to show for it, because literally the asset that's going to show for it is you're eventually going to chip away at that liability by making your annual contributions based on the percentages that the state plan determines. So without that accounting change, in fact, that happened at about fiscal 15. I think in the bottom chart over the 10-year history, you can kind of look at 2014's number, where it was only a very small deficit. And then all of a sudden in 2015, it ballooned to almost 30%. And what we've been doing is chipping away at that deficit every year by basically bringing in more revenues and spending less. So we're still in an overall deficit position, but again, it's wholly due to the fact that we're having to absorb about a $33 million liability from the firefighters' pension system. In comparison, your own pension system for non-uniformed employees, it's also in an unfunded position, but only unfunded at $3.7 million. So the sum of those two give you about $35 to $36 million of liabilities that you really don't cut checks for like most liabilities. You'll chip away at that over time by making your annual required contributions to the government, to the pension system. Let's flip one more page and talk about something that does make a little more sense, and that is our main general fund. How does its financial position look? Specifically, what's its carryover look like? In other words, we have fund balance, which is a fancy term for unspent revenues from previous years. And what we like to see is that the general fund maintains about, at a minimum, a 10% cushion. In other words, that we have about 10% of our annual revenue streams in a reserve capacity where we can basically then absorb any kind of extra costs or a revenue shortfall that were to occur. As you can see, as we've been tracking it over the last 10 years, we had dipped down pretty low into our minimum area in 2017 and 2018, but have now climbed back up over the last 3 years because of the excellent performances that have happened over the last 3 years. So we're now hovering at about 18%, and you can see that scores about a 6.9, almost a 7 on that ratio. And that's kind of the way the rest of this report works. There is a summary page at the end of each of the sets of ratios. So I'll flip you to the one summary page at the front, which is, again, let me put my glasses on page 16. And since we're looking at three different ratio sets that mean health and performance and sustainability, here's the page that lets you see all of the different ratios that we do and what they've scored over the past 5 years. And this is just the health component. So as you can see, we have health-wise, we saw a 6.28 or roughly a 6.3. That's a little bit better than where we were in fiscal 20 and a little bit better than where we were in fiscal 19. Same thing about fiscal 18. We've been improving our position because we're performing better, which increases our health. And so I would imagine as that's going to continue, hopefully the financial position continues to get better. There is a lot of federal money flushing through your records right now, one-time federal money that isn't going to repeat itself very often. I think we've got maybe one more year, maybe two, of some astronomical federal assistance that kind of skew the overall numbers a little bit. I mean, if we get $12 or $13 million from the federal government every year and they tell us that we can kind of spend it how we want, that kind of affects your health. I mean, that looks great. Now, depending on what you spend it on, will affect your health and your financial position also. So that money isn't going to repeat itself beyond fiscal 23, maybe. I don't see a once-in-a-generation type level of assistance from the federal government. As I said, it happens once in a generation, and this is our time. So we need to watch that overall health and performance rating. The next score I'll take you to is the summary page for the second set of ratings, which is the performance. 24. And again, you're going to have to strain at that bottom right corner to see that. I need to change that page number font color. Here you see the 4, 5, 6 ratios that we look at that are part of what I call your performance ratio. How did we do in this year? And notice in the last 3 years on the far right, 9.5, 9.4, 9.5. Those are great performances. That's why your health got better each one of those years. Notice in the 2 years before that, 17 and 18, we were only scoring in the 7s. That's not going to help you get healthier. That's just going to kind of tread water. So as long as we can continue to score in the 9s as far as performance is concerned, that's obviously going to help you. The last component, I'll take you to the summary page at the very end. Again, page 33. Here's your sustainability rating or capability rating. And notice how it doesn't really change very much. It only changes a couple of tenths of a % up and down, usually always dependent upon the revenue streams that we have direct control of, typically utilities, and whether or not we have issued more debt or less debt, or we've paid off our debts and we haven't reached our debt capacity. So we're kind of right around the 6, and that's where we've hovered most of the time. And so again, as long as we stay above a 5, we're in pretty good shape as far as capability is concerned. So all that together produces a 7.5. Again, same score we had last year, a little bit better than the score we had 2 years ago, but not much. So that's where we need to stay. If you could get in the 8s, that's great, but what that might mean is that if you want to score really well on this analysis and forgive everything else, you could just stop spending money, and then your performator score is going to look great, but no one's going to be happy because you're not providing public service, you're not producing culture and recreation, you're not helping out with the arts. In other words, there's a quality of life factor that I can't measure in the numbers because it's not quantifiable. So as long as we can operate somewhere in the 7s, overall, I think we're in good shape. So just wanted to let you know that, and I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Counselor, do you have any questions? I've got one.
Sure.
What's your message in a soundbite to the citizens concerning the financial health of their city?
I would say that the financial health of the city is very, very good. And it has been at its highest level that it's been at over the last several years. So we are at our best right now as our overall health is concerned.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Any final questions or comments, council? Michael?
Mayor, I did have one comment, and Frank, when you were talking about the fund balance, right? Mm-hmm. And I know we went through the budgeting process, we used those two numbers, 10% meaning the minimum and 30% meaning the most desirable.
Sure.
And I think this year it was what?
18.
It's itched up a little bit, 17 and some change.
Yeah.
Right? So we're heading the right direction.
Absolutely. The 10%, again, that's a minimum, and I've never felt that the minimum is high enough. I'm not a big advocate of just having 10% because I've seen events that occur where your fund balance got 8 by 10% in one day. An ice storm that you had to pay for in advance, or a one-time expenditure that no one had anticipated, an economic downturn where people stop spending money and your sales tax drops. So 10% is never enough. My 30% cap is what you need to score a 10 on this ratio, but you're probably a better, safer, more realistic target is around 20%, and we're getting very close to that, but again, it's not something you fix overnight. We inch up that way over a period of time. But I'm a little leery of 10. I'm way more comfortable with 20. I love 30, but again, at that point, it might be too much. So, but that's where we're headed, and that's what I'd like to see.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate
All right,
that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so before we move on to number 19, I forgot to report that we're striking item number 23. Legal needs to clean that up a little bit, and it'll come back on the 23rd, on the regular council meeting the 23rd. Now we'll move on to item number 19. Consider naming the drive that leads to Eastlake Park, Keith Jackson Parkway, after former councilman Keith Jackson, in honor of his work with youth sports and his years serving on the city council. Who's speaking on this? Dwayne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an item I think that it's pretty self-explanatory. We have a gentleman in our community that really represents the heart and soul of what we do here, and he's been committed for a number of years, longest running council person that we have. He and his family are here today. This is a tribute, even though it seems kind of small. I think it's a great opportunity for our community to recognize his efforts, his commitment, and his love for his community. So we're proud to bring this before you today for your consideration. We have a presentation, Mayor, that we'd like for you to make to him, as well as I think a gift in a sign that he can take home and put on his wall, and then we'll have the real one put up out, obviously, at the drive. So if you want to come down, and we'll
Okay, just a minute. We're going to pass this real quick. The council, do you have any questions before we get started? Okay, a little cleanup here, and the city attorney is going to tell you what the motion needs to be. Yeah, for this item, Keith Jackson.
Okay. So for this item, the motion needs to be to approve the change to Keith Jackson Parkway and direct the staff to come back with a resolution for next council meeting memorializing the fact.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll
and a
second it.
second. Discussion or debate, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Right, I'm going to read the inscription. It says, "For his lifelong
Yes, sir.
For his lifelong dedication to the Lawton Fort Sill community through his 22 years of service as a council member, his dedication to youth sports, and investing in the economy of his community by owning and operating his own business. As a member of the council, he played an active role in the creation of Eastside Park and the sports complexes located in Eastside and Grandview Parks. Keith Jackson served as Deputy State Commissioner for the Amateur Softball Association for 10 years and has been inducted into the Oklahoma Softball Hall of Fame for meritorious service. His work in bidding on adult and youth tournaments made Lawton one of the most sought-after locations to host ASA softball tournaments in Oklahoma. Former council member Jackson's most recent accomplishment happened in 2015 when he played a major role in spearheading the biggest event in Lawton, the Freedom Festival. Let's give Keith a round of applause. God bless you, my friend. Thank you. Just say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so no microphone, I'll try to speak fairly loud. Mr. Jackson, we wanted to give you this from staff as a token of our appreciation for all the years of service that you gave to the city of Lawton and the advocate that you've been for youth sports and everything that you've done that you and I were here together for. So I want to say thank you. This is from staff to you, sir, so thank you very much.
Okay, council, we've got to back up a little bit on 18. We were supposed to accept that report, not receive a report. We received it, we're supposed to accept it as well. So if I could get a motion to accept the report on item 18.
Make a motion to accept the report presented.
And do I have a second? Have a motion to accept and a second. Please vote. And the motion carries 7-0. And that moves us up to item number 20. Consider approving an agreement for funding and limited support between the Fires Innovation Science and Technology Accelerator, FISTA, Development Trust Authority, and the City of Lawton to fund the operation, management, administration, maintenance, and equipping of FISTA facilities during the 2022-2023 fiscal year to encourage economic industrial development in the City of Lawton and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement. Clarence.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mayor, council,
City Manager, Mr. Cleghorn, Colonel P., thank you for the opportunity to address this body. I just want to say thank you for the support that this body's given to the FISTA. And as we continue to look and move forward, if you've had an opportunity to drive by the plaza, you'll know that the north face of the Sears building is not like it used to look. There's some holes there, but we're actually changing the face of it to make it look like we want it to represent our defense contractors who will be housed in that facility, something we can be proud of as they support our 2 cross-functional teams out at Fort Sill. I do want to make just a very quick announcement. We did receive word from Congressman Cole's office that we have received or in line for the $1 million grant, and that's through the HUD Community Development Grant. An email was sent this morning to actually identify how that money is to be drawn down. And that part of the $1 million will be used for Phase X of the build out of Phase 1 of our project. So I just want to make that quick announcement. So question is, how soon will we get it? It's kind of up to them how fast, and I hear that you have to be vigilant and be on them and make calls, but we've got a couple of people that are helping us, and we'll continue to make that work, and even Congressman Cole is going to stay on top of it. In your packet, there's some second page is really just an overview of where we're at on the project itself. We plan to do something like this monthly to you or for you so you can see, but it's basically what has been completed as of through August the 2nd, and then what we expect to accomplish over the next 20 days. 3 slides in, and it's dated at the very top August 9th, and that is today. These are the current tenants that are in the retail space of the mall or the plaza. And we have 19 tenants that are currently what we consider long-term tenants. Number 19 are our DoD military recruiters that are there. That includes Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. But then our renewals is in that middle section. You can see those 12, we've signed renewal agreements with them to occupy our space within the mall. And then the new permanent tenants is that section at the very bottom. But unfortunately, it looks like we're going to lose Foot Locker. It's something that we received word. We'll continue to try to work with them, but it looks like they are going to be moving out. So that's just a quick overview of the current tenants that are in the Central Plaza. The next page are our defense contractors and our academic institutions that we're working with. And I do have a comment I'll make about Dynetics here in just a second, but I do want to point out Oklahoma State University. OSU received a $250,000 grant, and that was awarded through McMahon Foundation. President Casey Schrum was here 3 weeks ago and received that and signed the agreement that $250,000 will be used to help space that we're going to actually occupy in the plaza to do STEM education, engineering, and then also makerspace. So that'll actually fund 2 years of build out for that particular space. And like I say, President Schrum was in town, had the opportunity to meet with her as well as some other individuals from the community, had a chance to visit with her. Now, what I'd like to do is have you turn to the next page, and it's got our FISTA logo at the top, and it's for immediate release. We have an announcement to make, and we have permission from Dynetics, which is a Leidos corporation or company. They will occupy space within the FISTA or Phase 2 of our FISTA project, and it's SEMA AI, which is the cyber electromagnetic activities in artificial intelligence. And they've made that announcement as of this morning, released that. So we are pleased to be able to announce they're our first contract that we will have inside that facility. It's high-tech jobs, engineering that'll relate to math, computer science, and other fields. These jobs will average $100,000 a year. First set are 10 positions with the option to add 10 more in the very near future, and we'll continue to work with them as we move forward. And they're really our first big partner that we've signed on with since the start of our phase one. But as we've said in the past, we've not been able to really make announcements because we can't say anything until they're ready for us to say something. So we're very pleased to be able to announce this. And I'll also say Dynetics is very supportive of STEM education, and they want to continue to support that not only for Lawton, Oklahoma, but Southwest Oklahoma to try to bring in individuals. So we've not even released this to the media yet, so now we're going to do this, so you guys have heard it first right here. So thank you.
It seems appropriate, Clarence, that anytime we have an announcement of jobs, that we applaud. So
Okay.
let's applaud.
Well, thank you. And this is a lot of work that's been put on by many, many people. James Taylor is our executive director, has worked tirelessly. Nate Slade, who's local representative for Dynetics as well. And then I appreciate those individuals as well as others moving forward. Now, the last page in your document is the budget. Now, I know you just heard from your auditor, and I do have a request and have an ask. We've talked to our accountant, which is Hatch and Croak, or Scott Hatch, and Danny Blackburn. And one of the things that we received notice from Rich before he left, and he said, hey, one of the paragraphs in this agreement would be to have your audits completed within 90 days. Well, we're a little concerned by 90 days, and we'll do all we can to make that happen. But what we're asking, and with your permission, would like to ask for 120 days, but we will work and do everything we can to try to get that done ahead of time. Our other concern is Robert Turner is the CPA that does a lot of audits for a lot of the local entities. He may not have time to get it all done. So our concern is our rent that's paid by our tenants. They pay that, and it's really a month after we get the end of our fiscal year. So we're already 60 days left in the clock, and so we would ask for an allowance of 120 day on our contract. The budget before you really is asking for the city to provide funding for the FIST operations of $785,625. And you can see that in that first column, and there are 4 columns for your review. The second column is the Central Plaza piece of that, and that's at $857,986, and that's to offset the debt service on the note of $1,560,000 that's paid each year. And then the $3,309,000, that's the guaranteed maximum price. It's already been approved in the past, and we still put that on the budget to actually carry that forward. So the request that we have is about $1.64 million, if you add those two numbers together, to help us through this next fiscal year. And I know there's a lot of numbers on the page, but this is something that both Rich Rogalski, before he left, we worked with and tried to finalize and then put this before you as consideration. So at this time, I would be glad or happy to try to answer any questions that you might have specific to any numbers that are on this document.
Mr. Burke.
Well, number one, I wanted to say I'm so excited that we have a tenant that we can actually talk about now. But this just proves that everything that we've been working for since the day we started this is finally starting to come to fruition. And it starts with the construction, the first, steel frame that went up to now. I think we're getting that energy and it's rolling. Council, this is, to me, this has been something I've been supported since day one. But it's, again, one of those things that our community has to invest in because we're investing in ourselves. And I think everybody up here believes that too, seeing that they've got, they got a $25 million award, with a $25 or $29 million award. That's a huge amount of money. Yeah. And can you imagine if we get 2 or 3 or 5 or 9 of those types of awards in our community, what types of jobs, what it will mean to Lawton's future? It will be the biggest thing that's ever happened to Lawton Fort Sill, the biggest ever. So I totally support this, and I think that we've done really well even with the retail side.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not happy with some of the things, but that's not on us. It's on
We're doing
corporate
everything
retail.
we can to
Yes.
try to keep them.
Yes.
And we're doing, I mean, bending over backwards. And I appreciate, the staff that's on the mall management side, and they do a good job, but it's, and I'm glad we've got the retail that we do, and we want to keep them there.
Yes. So I support it totally, Council.
I'll add to your comment about the jobs and the numbers that I was reading an article by MIT professor, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, economics, and he said high-tech jobs such as this, each one produces 5 more service jobs in the community. So this is pretty dynamic thing that's happening here. Mr. Warren.
I would echo those comments. I truly believe that in the future, the FISTA and what it brings to town will dwarf Goodyear. Not to say that that's a bad thing for Goodyear. It's just the world is a different place now, and technology is where everything is focused. And this is going to provide jobs. This is going to provide jobs for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren in the future. They don't have to go to Norman or Dallas or anywhere to get that engineering job now. There is a future here in Lawton.
Thank you. That's a good point. Mr. Hampton.
Thank you, Mayor. My wife and I like the pho, so we generally go to the mall and have some pho. And it's it's not jam packed in there, but it's very active at the mall, according to what my wife and I have seen. Our downtown area is really important for all of us, and this is just another thing that's happening downtown that's going to add to revitalizing that area down there. There's so much stuff going on. I'm pretty excited about the jobs that are coming in. I mean, that's going to enhance our whole city. That's going to pump money into our economy, to put it simply. And like I said, our downtown area is coming around, and I'm really pleased to say that as a Ward 5 representative. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. And go ahead, Ms. Chapman.
Clarence.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you to all of you who are on the board, who've worked so diligently on this. This has taken time, and we're so wanting everything to move fast, and your hands are tied when you can't tell us the wonderful future that we have with the different companies, the defense contractors. This is our future. This is our future for all of us who are older, who have lived here forever. And I just applaud you, and keep working at it.
Well, it's a team effort, and everybody on the board. This is a working board.
It
I promise
is.
you, they put a lot of hours and time, effort, and energy, so thank you.
And a volunteer board. Mr. Harris.
And it is a volunteer board.
Linda's kind of said what I wanted to say, but I do want to echo the report that shows that there are new tenants coming in, and that's exciting, as well as many of the tenants that are there have renewed their leases, and so the plaza is still a vibrant, financially viable entity, and as Linda said, that goes to your whole team. You, James, Nate, all the people that had the vision in the beginning that said that this could be possible. It's an incredible vision, and well done.
Thank you.
Okay, now before we have a motion, I'd like to ask the city manager, are you fine with this audit deal remaining an administrative function? I feel like it is, and we don't need to be involved in that.
Yes, Mayor. As a matter of fact, Mr. Fortney and I spoke prior to this recommendation being made to this board about the audit. And the audit's important in a couple of ways, right? We have statutory guidelines by the state that we are required to hit milestones. Those affect things like gasoline tax, for example. They affect our credit rating and a few other things that help us maintain that great performer rating that we had. But we felt that it was a reasonable request for that 30-day extension that still allows us to put all those documents together at the end for that cumulative audit. So we still feel that we may be able to reach that end of the year deadline. December the 31st is the state recommended guideline or statutory line. So I agree with Clarence. the gentleman that does audits does a lot of additional audits, and it makes it difficult. But we have, from that administrative perspective, put a line in the sand, so to speak, that says this is what we got to move towards. We have a goal. We really didn't have that goal before, so now we do.
Okay, and so that'll remain administrative and not involve the council. Mr. Burke, would you like to make a motion since you serve on the authority?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the funding and limited support agreement with the Vista Development Authority.
I would wholeheartedly second that.
I'm sorry?
I would wholeheartedly second that.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion or debate? Please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Clarence.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, we expect more of those announcements soon. No pressure. Item number 21, consideration of approval of the draft of the FFY 2021 Annual Action Plan, AAP, with an amendment to the 5-year consolidated plan, acceptance of recommended amounts for public service organizations, PSO, funding request applications, and revisions to Housing and Urban Development, HUD, funded programs submitted through the Housing and Community Development Office of the City. Janet.
Good afternoon. We are presenting an item for your consideration that obviously has a lot of components to it. One of those is the annual action plan for our community development division, and the annual action plan attached to your council packet. However, we have 15 different projects that are part of this. We have the home rehab, emergency repair, housing improvements. All of these things receive federal funding. What we're doing today is we're asking for you to approve the draft because the federal government asks us to start the process with the public hearings for all of these projects. And Gary is here. Obviously, he oversees this department, but we're asking you for a couple of things. One of those is to approve the draft so that we can begin to have the, as I said, the meetings with the public. But also, we've got some language in our current HUD housing language that was restrictive on the participants that we could award to. And there was a restriction for only about $5,000 that they could have. Anything over that amount, they could not be considered for it. When HUD looked at that language, they said that was too restrictive and it did not serve the public purpose, really. They asked us to consider taking that out. So that will be part of what we're asking you to consider. Another thing that I would like to point out is that we have a bus stop update for you. Gary has been able to allocate about $100,000 from this federal funding to go towards our LATS bus stops. So that's a new addition for us, and we think it will go a long way. It will serve our low-income areas and will improve those stations where they're getting dropped off or picked up. So that's the brief gist of this, and I'll have Gary here to answer any other questions.
I think she covered all of my slides, so I'm up to questions. But basically, on the slides that I put in the PowerPoint, that do we have a slide changer? Oh,
Before you get going with that, Gary, I have a question if possible. So Janet, you mentioned the 5,000, right? What you're talking about is a financial means testing that was restrictive, and $5,000 was a limit of assets that they could have in their name. That has since been changed or recommended to be changed to be a more permissive process for our constituents. Is that correct?
correct. The 5,000, basically what our policy manual said was that if they had $5,000 in the bank, they couldn't be approved. They exceeded the financial. And the HUD language in the CFRs actually said that you could consider income off of the 5,000 as a consideration for annual income. And it was just something that had been placed in the manual a long time ago, and it was a misinterpretation, really. So what we can consider, they use a passbook savings rate or some other rate similar to that, and you can only consider the income off of 5,000. It's not a detractor from the individual. When they have low to middle income wages and they manage to save $5,000 for emergencies and health, it was never meant to punish them.
So Gary, basically what you're saying is that whatever interest they gain, it counts against their income, but not the money itself, the assets itself.
Just the income off the money, not
Thanks.
the money itself.
Did that take care of your discussion, Michael? Yes, it did. Okay. And if you're having trouble with that, I think Tracy can forward it for you. Turn your pages for you.
Okay. The first page that I have on that, I might not know how to work it.
Okay, it's on.
Oh, okay. That's just the grant history for the CDBG and home grants, and it includes the 2021 Home ARP grant. And you can see that we're pretty consistent from year to year. The home grant went up a little this year, but the funding has been pretty uniform throughout the years.
Our PSO allocations.
Okay. The recapture provision, at the end of last year when we did our CAPER, our end of year report, basically they had requested that we change the recapture language. We had in 3 different places in the policy manual recapture language that differed from place to place. They wanted it uniform and they wanted it to reflect the CFR language, and that's what we did. We incorporated that language into the recapture language in the manual, and that becomes part of the annual action plan, those updates. So that's why it's here before you today, is basically to just show you the language and how it's recaptured should that come to pass.
Here you see the highlighted in yellow, the language that we're proposing that you approved today, and that has been approved by HUD and recommended by them that we replace the old language with this.
Yeah, that's the new language, and it's taken straight from the statutes. The first-time homebuyer project, it's a little similar to the $5,000, but basically what came about was when HUD was reviewing our policy, they came across we had it in the form of 7,500, we'll forget about the penny, 7,500 that was forgiven after their period of affordability of living in the house, and then they paid payments on the other 7,500. And what happened in that event was their income had to be, their house payment could only be 30% of their annual income. Well, because that 7,500 was supposed to be a 5-year affordability period. And so because the 30%, it was pushing people out to making payments for as long as 10 years. And that 10-year period, HUD felt like that was onerous, and we also, it was not just onerous for the individuals, but it was onerous for us as well to collect the money and have the paperwork and the reporting that was due on that. So they asked if we could afford to forgive the other 7,500 and forgive the entire 15,000. And that's the language that we've changed it to. This is kind of the big one that I think caused the most conflict over the years that I've heard about, and then I kind of witnessed some of it this year. And anyway, we went to the City Planning Commission, We had a meeting. We had figures based on formulas that we had in place. And anyway, they weren't exactly happy with the figures. And we took them back and said we would review them and reconsider our position. So we took them back to the office and we kind of all went through them again, started from scratch. And the one thing that I noticed is there were two parts of it that were a little difficult. One of the parts was we had basically been fairly strict in our scoring. And if they didn't mention it in their application, then we didn't consider it. But then I felt like, and the rest of the members of the office felt like, if they did the activity, but they failed to mention it in the reporting, that was not, if we know they do that. And one of the examples was the food bank. Well, none of the organizations is officially a food bank. And I think only one of them got any credit for that because they had it in their application. But then almost half of them perform some kind of feeding. A good example is Lawton Support Services. They do a couple of food bank drops a year, and they're going to try to do more. And they didn't get any credit for that. It wasn't in their application. Well, when we did the refigures, the ones that were high were moving down toward the middle. The ones that were low were moving up toward the middle. And I thought to have a meeting with all of the PSOs. We had a meeting in my office, Janet attended, and we got everybody. It was rather cramped in our conference room. I didn't really, yeah, that was the plan. She told me it was a stroke of genius, but it was unintentional, right? But anyway, we got everybody in the room, all of the PSOs, and we discussed. And I asked them, because basically everybody, when they didn't do something in particular, they called the other agency and they worked together and they all know each other and they all interacted. It was wonderful to see in person the conversation in the room. So I proposed that we split it evenly between the 8 organizations. They all concurred. It was a consensus decision, and they were all very supportive, and they seemed to all be pleased by the process. So that was the biggest thing, and that's what we brought you today was everything equal.
Can I ask one question real quick?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask, did we have any new applicants that we'd never had before? That's what
Not this year, no.
None at all?
Well, okay, on the applications, we did have one that had been a participant before, and that was Salvation Army. And their problem was apparently their governance comes from Atlanta, Georgia, and they couldn't get their paperwork in the time frame. They're going to try to apply next year. But
yeah, they do a lot of good work. Okay, that's what I'd heard, so just wanted to make sure.
And I encouraged them to start earlier on getting that stuff, and we look forward to, they do a lot of good stuff, so.
Thank you for this. I was just thinking last year, didn't we try to massage all these numbers and who got more and who got less? And every one of these organizations do very well for the community. To me, seems very fair, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And it sounds so simple now that I look
Well,
at it.
we did try to make it simpler. And then the last item, this is basically the action plan in the most concise format that you can have it. It shows all of the projects. All of the projects are pretty much similar to what we've done before. The numbers were adjusted. Most of them are based on percentages of the overall grant amount. And the only thing that was really a big change was we added the bus stop upgrade. and that's under public infrastructure, and it probably will be, it was taken, I actually think we robbed 40,000 from the sidewalks and 40 from sewer rehab that's been on there year to year, and it's out of past funds that are available. So the bus stop upgrade seems like a really good thing. It was going to add some additional siding to it for shelter from the wind, and possibly some water. And I think we had a meeting with a gentleman from Medicine Park that had a great idea about some misters in the summertime because it's very hot. And
did you discuss at all ADA accessibility?
yes, we did.
And that's part of the sidewalk money too, if we needed it for that.
So, you paused, and I'm assuming you're ready for questions.
Yes, sir.
Or were you done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This right part says remaining funds from previous years.
Yes.
So this is funds from previous year's CDBG, not to be confused with the 15% dedicated for group entity administration that has not been spent from previous years, everything to the
Correct.
right of the solid line.
Correct.
So what is all this on the left, and what is it being spent on? Because in other words, this bus stop money, 100,000, sidewalk money, 160, sewer reconstruction, 160. In current year allocation, where's that represented over here? I understand it was leftover money. I'm saying if it was done this year, where would it have come from? Do you understand my question?
I think I do.
Well, start explaining, and I'll let you know if you did.
Well, okay, I'm gonna start talking about the 160,000 for sidewalks and sewer rehab. Both of those amounts last year were 200,000, and as far as I know, none of it was spent. Nobody ever asked to spend the funds, I guess, at that point, because we don't necessarily come up with the projects, but we get the money there. So the 200,000, I think, has been on the books for sidewalks and sewer reconstruction for 2 or 3 years that I could see in the past, not being spent. So that's why I stole 40,000 from each of them and put it toward the bus stops. And I guess I don't know if I have the skill set to explain.
Let's go at it this way. Let's
Okay.
go to the left of the line. It might have been easier to come see me before the council meeting.
That's the last one.
The top two, on the left of the line, on 2022 allocation, home and CDBG, those
Correct.
top two numbers are used for administration in the city to run the programs, correct?
Yes, sir.
What's the 311,893? Is that our loan programs that we have, and
Those are whole
first-time
home-
home buyer, stuff like that?
Those are whole home rehabilitations, and probably if we were going to be the true aspect of that, we try to budget that can be around 40,000 per home, and it also includes some other items in that are in the rehab category. But what happens is, like, we allot for doing at least 4, and in the past several years, that's where the excess has come from, is from that category, probably more than the others, because I think during COVID they've redone one, and so the excess probably came from those projects.
And you can move that to another category like bus stop, sidewalks, whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this exterior improvements, that's other, well, it's kind of funny that CDBG instead of home. That is where people can make application. Low-income people can make applications, right?
Correct.
Emergency repairs, that's good. Okay. And what's the Section 108 CDBG?
Section 108 loan is the Second Street loan. And my understanding on that is when the balance gets to be 500,000, then the payments will be made out of that. There's a $500,000, and at that point, we'll stop making those payments, and it'll be made out of that $500,000.
Okay, you answered my questions. Are there any other questions, council?
Can I just make one comment so that we are on the same page? So even with what we were paying on the Second Street, the reason we were able to use that is because that was an underprivileged area. So all of these areas, even though we think we have 160,000 for sewer or for sidewalks, that's for areas that are underprivileged, that have areas of need. So if you're looking for sidewalks in certain areas, Ward 7, that's where I'd start looking. You know, I mean, I've been saying this to you guys, and that's really where you need the help. You need to say, hey,
correct,
I need a sidewalk from A to Z, and I'm in an area that needs that. And same thing for entities that need help in funding. CDBG money, that's exactly what it's designed for. And we don't have to dig into other funds to get help. In some of these instances, we have CDBG money, and that is exactly what this is designed for. And so we should be using it. We shouldn't have these huge carryovers.
Well, and that's really on the 4 rehabs a year. You know, we need to be doing 4 rehabs.
But and I wanted to say thank you for the prelude. I had been talking to our previous deputy city manager about sidewalks, a couple of projects in the Lawton View area where we have elderly and a lot of children. So we'll be getting together. But I want to say that this is really awesome. I've seen, even before being in the seat, some of the meetings about this money. This is probably the best and most collaborative effort for distributing this money. And so I want to thank you guys for doing that.
Thank you.
But I'll be sending an email to meet with you.
Okay, Mr. Harris, did you have a question or comment?
I'm good.
All right, Ms. Hankins?
I was glad to see it went this way. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, everybody got together, that's scary. But,
It was scary.
Yeah, but you said that process went well, too. So that really makes me feel good. I think we don't want to duplicate services, so when we can see services that are like that meet different needs. I mean, I've always thought it would be nice to have a central agency, so when a person comes in, they can go do this or based on their need, and not duplicate services. We're not big enough a city to be duplicating services.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a comment also. I think that the last time that one of the things that we had brought up was that we want to try to move forward in the future to not to be subsidizing the same organizations all the time, and to encourage them to look for other funding sources also. It's more of a comment that we make sure that we kind of try to promote that. I think that as we move forward, that there's other organizations that probably would apply if they knew about it. And you know, I think that if we begin to try to encourage these same organizations to find some funding elsewhere, and we can spread it out more, then I think that it might be good for the future. So, you must be a heck of a facilitator to get all those people together and to agree on something. But I appreciate all that you do too also.
Thank you.
I did have a question about the funds for first-time homebuyers and the rehabs. What do you guys see the struggle with trying to distribute or get rid of that money? Because I know it's on the table every year.
One of the things, we haven't had a lot of first-time homebuyer applications in the last few years, but the $5,000 instrument and assets was causing a lot of people to be disapproved. So hopefully we can get it out there and help more people and get more people involved.
Okay, so Mr. Warren, you got your light on you.
I was gonna go where Mr. Hampton went, and I'll go there a little bit. I too am amazed that you were able to get everybody in one room. And, but my issue is still, we don't know if there's a better way to do these things as long as we continue to give the money to the same people every year. And I don't know, I had mentioned before, maybe we should have a limit on the number of years that and then you have to be off for 2 years or whatever. Nobody picked that up and carried it, so I'm guessing the rest of the council didn't really think that was a good idea. But as a stopgap, or maybe as something to try next time, since you've already done this, if we were to have a undistributed account there also. Let's say you have 8 entities, rather than splitting it up between 8, split it up between 9, one of them being unnamed, and that way you have some funds if an entity that hasn't ever applied before comes with, and make the rule whatever. If they come with an idea or a program that isn't already out there. Because otherwise we're never gonna know if there's a smarter, better, faster way to do things.
Can the 15% PSO money be carried over?
I don't see that, no.
It cannot be carried over. Okay, does that help you? Now, I do think, Mr. Warren, that if that's what you want to add to your motion, to approve this draft of FFY 2022 action plan with an amendment to the 5-year consolidated plan, accepting the city planning commission funding recommended for PSO applicants, and accepting revisions to the city's policy manual for housing and urban development funded grants, and direct them to come back with a plan to do something like you're saying, then I think they can do it. But without the council directing them to do it, they're stuck with what we have. So would you like to add something like that to the motion I just read for you?
That works.
So you're that motion plus directing them to bring back a plan for limited years or something to include others. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we have a second to that motion, discussion or debate. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, first, Gary, we don't ever steal anything. We reallocate the funds, okay? Okay, so just to make sure we're clear, we just reallocated the funds, okay? Very important distinction there. So make sure we get that done. Right. But I do have a question when it comes to sewer. I know that there are older sections of town that would be very appropriate for the sewer rehab, and I believe we had some requests submitted to use some of those sewer reconstruction funds, right? But what process does it take for you to approve those funds? I think we have to have an environmental study done or something along that lines. Is that what it is?
We do an environmental study on every project. It's part of the process.
So then we can absolutely, for example, if we wanted to do some sewer reconstruction in the older part of towns where we have a lot of sewer backups, we could use this money for that, right?
Correct.
So all you got to do is tell Rusty over there to get a sewer rehab construction division in that part of town, and we can spend that money on that.
Yeah, Rusty can spend money on that, we all agree. Ms. Hankins.
Anybody else?
Well, I was just going to mention that these are our local service providers for social services. And it's not that easy. I mean, I'm sure they have other funds. I mean, they don't get by on this amount. But if it's a good program and it's working, then why not continue to fund them? I mean, why say you have to do something else? Because that's really hard, and it's kind of a game with the legislature, I think. They say, well, you can't get this, you got to find another funding source. So you change the name of the program and tweak it and make it a little different, and you're still doing the same thing. So let them, if they're doing good, let them do good.
So I get that, and you do understand it's just a motion to come back with some options, right? Okay. We're voting to approve what they put here so they can do their public hearings. I understand, and that was spoken with experience, I could tell. And Mr. Harris?
I may need some help with this. I had a question for Councilman Warren. So if there were no other applicants, would that then free up that money that you want to put aside, or do we need to do a better job of recruiting new?
Well, I would say, yeah, if we have to spend it in that year, we're going to have to reallocate it, and maybe do a spiff or whatever you want to call it to everybody if it doesn't get used up. But back to what Ms. Hankins said earlier, I also think that we probably would be more effective by looking at concentration of services within groups, as far as there's no reason to have multiple whatever clothes closets or things of that nature, as long as we can make the items, whether it be food or clothing or whatever, available across the entire population. Not that it wouldn't be able to get to your area. So, because I think a lot of times that's the smarter way to go. I know that's most of the automotive industry, that's the way they go. You do what you do, and you do that well, and you don't mess with that other stuff. So that might be something to look at too. And I think that those groups would probably need to be involved in that discussion. But yeah, if we could reallocate, before the end of the year, say, well, we didn't find anybody, and here's an extra $5,000 or whatever.
Thank you, Councilman.
Are we ready to vote? Please vote. And it passes 7-0. Man, that was easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 22, receive an update on the Elmer Thomas Park and Lakes Master Plan, along with discussion on any park items, receiving input from council, and giving direction and guidance as deemed necessary. Dwayne? We have 8-0. We had somebody show up. I'm sorry.
Mayor and Council, we've got Nate Clear here from Happen Associates. He's here to present an update on the master plan for the lakes in Elmer Thomas Park, and then also he may touch on the aquatics master plan that was also mentioned.
Wonderful. And tell me your name again.
Nate Clare with Half
Nate.
Associates.
Nate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Nate.
Mayor? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, council members. Dwayne just asked me to come down and give a brief update to you where we are on the Lakes Master Plan. So we are wrapping up kind of the information and data gathering portion of the plan. As you can imagine, with those two large lakes, that's a fairly extensive process determining all the land adjacent, land ownership, city tracts, and their uses adjacent to the lake. So we're wrapping that up. Here in the next couple of weeks, we'll be working with staff to schedule input sessions with all of you, other stakeholders, and anyone with an interest, and then also scheduling some public input sessions as well. So be on the lookout for those invitations here in the coming weeks. We know that at the end of the year you've got some new circumstances coming up with the lake, so we're working expediently to wrap this plan up. But we do feel that your input and public input is an important part of the process, and so those will be our next milestones for the lakes. Regarding Elmer Thomas Park, we're just getting kicked off on that. Had kind of a kickoff meeting 2 weeks ago in Oklahoma City with Dwayne and Christine. At that time, they asked that we kind of possibly set Elmer Thomas Park to the side and look at the new aquatic or water park facility. We felt that's important to the master plan. We don't obviously want to drop in a new water park facility without looking at least preliminary at all the program elements within the park. So we're kind of running those side by side, but we are at the same time preparing a proposal for the water park. I know Robbie Hazelbaker was here, I believe, at the last session and gave the presentation with WTI on aquatic facilities. And so we've worked with Robbie and his team in the past. And so I'm going to work with Robbie to prepare a proposal, to prepare some concepts for the water park, and hopefully get that into staff for review, kind of simultaneously working on that and the Elmer Thomas Park conceptual plan. So that's kind of where we are. We're also in the process of preparing and talking with staff. We know that there's several little things parks related that are high priorities, and so we thought it was best if we go ahead and maybe prepare a professional services agreement so that every time one of these items comes up, we don't have to negotiate a contract. We'll have a base contract in place, and we'll kind of work on a task order basis. So we're working through that process right now. So happy to answer any questions, or I'll turn it back over to Dwayne.
I would just add that the managers directed us to start a list of all the different park facilities. You'll remember in the master plan, we had a concept for expanding or developing the Lee West Park. So we are now in the process of putting all of this together on a spreadsheet that we can bring back, kind of like we did the CIP programming, where we can put these on a list, get them in front of you. We can start to get the prioritization from the council on what you want to see at the top of that list, and then we'll start picking those off as funding permits and as we get plans put together. Nate is correct. We're actually going through right now and evaluating a lot of the parks with emphasis on some of the more historical parks that we know will be remain a constant within those communities, so that we can start trying to figure out what it's going to take to get them back up and in shape. We obviously are working on the SHPO piece to have them come down. We're going to talk with them as well on some of those parks and the historical pieces that might be located in some of them. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of curious as to how you would prefer us to bring this back to you to get your input. Would you rather us have a special meeting? And because if we try to get everyone together, we're going to have a meeting. So it might be more beneficial for us to set a special council meeting for specifically the purpose of discussing the parks. So it's either that, or when we do the public input piece, then we could actually kind of tail end that official meeting, a special meeting with the public input piece, and have them an opportunity as well.
So I like that idea. Do you guys? Okay, that sounds like the plan. I'm seeing lots of yeses. Let me ask a question. I know we've applied for grants to do the sidewalk around Lake Helen. What's the status of all that?
Okay, that was a TSET grant. We did not receive that. We were extremely disappointed. Richard was probably the most disappointed because he's was very involved in all of that. But we did not get that grant. It would have been, I think, $700,000 over 2 years, and it would have been tremendous. It would have funded all of that and then some. So we're kind of back to the drawing board. As we do the Elmer Thomas master plan, I'm certain that will be a piece of it, because we've kind of told them that some of the ideas of what's been kicked around. We do listen to the council on what you like to see, so we kind of feed that information to them and try to make sure that's included. But we have some funding out of CIP that we should be able to fund some of these projects. It won't go very far, but it will get at least some of the premier renovations and upgrades to the parks done, like the Lee West, Elmer Thomas, maybe that water park piece. And then we also have some work to do on McMahon softball complex. We have some safety issues that we need to deal with training walls and things of that nature. The amphitheater is another piece of the Elmer Thomas Park that we'd like to see. Those those really come to fruition, so.
So I've heard several people talk about a water feature in that ditch that runs east and west along Ferris, you know, just inside the walking track. You know what I'm talking about?
We looked at it today, yes, sir.
Okay, and there's some plan to make a water feature there?
Yeah, in fact, we were talking about the existing spray park in Elmer Thomas Park, and if we expand that and add a pool, a municipal pool to it, make the spray park bigger, this would be a non-recirculating spray park, so we could take the water off of that and potentially create a stream or a small waterway that would carry the water over there, and we could capture that in that part of the park. We could raise that retaining, it's actually a water retention area over there, and we could take that, make a spillway and catch some of that water. So we're looking into those, but that is, I think, going to be part of the plan.
I'm really excited to see this to come to fruition. You know, Elmer Thomas Park is right in the middle of Lawton. And if you have been to any other cities and what they have done to their big city parks, it is a place to go. This is totally family oriented. It would be a wonderful asset to Lawton, and we need to build upon this for Elmer Thomas Park. I feel very, very strongly about that.
Council's previous direction and approval to install the infrastructure for the electrical Holiday in the Park, providing the electricity to the stage down over where the amphitheater is located, those are instrumental in us developing that park and really making it a destination to go to. And so with this master plan and those things that are already taking place, it's just a matter of time for us to get you a plan back for you to vote on and say, yes, go forth and make it happen, and we'll make it happen.
Mr. Burke.
I just wanted to not forget the facts that we were talking about Lee West Park and Eastside Park being a destination place where we'd have a smaller splash pad. They're wonderful. I'm glad we did the one we did and what we've done. But and you know, I love Elmer Thomas Park, so I think I've lived there. But I just want I just want us to make sure that because there's a lot of people that don't go to Elmer Thomas Park and would love to have something on the east side and the west side, and they've got a splash pad on the south side, and so I mean we can't really go north, so it's kind of one of those things, and so I just hope that we remember that. And as far as the sidewalk goes, again, some of that money, I believe this is in Ward 5.
No.
Ward 2? 2. Sorry to say, wait a minute, I'm 4. Hold on, what are you talking about? You're who and I'm who, and I don't know. Okay, so you confused me. I was like, wait a minute, I am Ward 4, I think. But anyway, there's some of that CDBG money that can be used for some projects in that park.
We just talked about that very thing. I just asked Christie about that.
And that's why that leftover money's there, and I've argued for years about trying to find projects that'll make that work in areas, and we can use that in those areas. No different than when we use it around our mall.
Well, I know I didn't mention Eastside Park. It's on the radar. We've already paid a visit there as well. We're already looking at that pond that's on the front edge of that. Sits on the east side of that drive, expanding that, making a water feature there, bringing that parking lot maybe a little further down, putting the splash pad in. We're looking at doing something kind of similar to what we're looking at with Lee West.
That's great.
Lee West is $3.5 million now.
Yeah, well, that's Lee West.
You mean it says to the east side of Keith Jackson Parkway?
Yeah, the one where you turn in on Keith Jackson Parkway.
But yeah, and I think, because we want a dog park there. And so, there's some things there we want to talk about. So making sure we put everything in the right space. You don't want a dog park up here and you don't want your splash pad down here. So you got to make sure you get it right.
Mr. Warren.
We've already got that West Side Park going, so I'm good with that. But I thought about something, and I've thought about it before. In fact, I think I've spoken to Councilman Burke about it in the past. But I saw it in Norman this weekend. I was up there driving around, and it would be very interesting to look at building a parkway along 5th between the Plaza, 35th Division Park, and Elmer Thomas Park. You could create a parkway sidewalk on both sides of the street. It would make that whole area walkable, and it would give you the ability, when you have festivals, to actually have 3 festival areas. You could have the Plaza parking lot, you could have 35th Division, and you could have Elmer Thomas.
You know, I'll be honest with you, that's really Richard's idea. Richard came up with the idea to me about using it because people run from the Y and other things. So being able to connect Shepherd Park down to the light, so that way you didn't have to redo everything, and then going down both sides and making a real connection there, I think it's a great idea.
Makes a lot of sense.
We just attended a trail and Parks and Trails Summit up in Oklahoma City, and one of the things we took away was that an area there behind, I guess it would be the library courtyard, where we could connect that to Shepherd Park once we get that done. And that is exactly kind of the thought process. If we start to expand that and make that connection, we could bring that all together.
Dwayne, I may be bringing something up that might be giving you a little heartburn, but I am concerned about the location of the sports complex in Elmer Thomas Park. I am 100% for a sports complex. This is where I think, as people sitting in these chairs, we have to listen to the people. I have had so many messages to me in a variety of ways in the last few months that they all want a sports complex, but they are just not settled on that particular location in Elmer Thomas Park. And I haven't spoken to anyone on the dais at all about this, but I'm very concerned that we need to, we were elected to listen to the people, to our citizens. And I think this may be one item that we need to take a step back, and I hate to take a step back, I do, but to go forward some way to make all of this work. We've got to have that sports complex. Inflationary costs has made it, ballooned out the gazoo, but I am concerned about that.
Are you saying develop the conceptual drawing and plan without the sports complex there?
Yes.
Okay, and I believe, for me, I think we've moved past that point too. Need to look for something else. We probably need to weigh in here on that. Council, are you ready to move away from that location? I feel like it added a lot of the expense, and I'm ready to start thinking about another location. Anybody want to weigh in?
Mayor.
You don't want to weigh in?
I do want to weigh in, yes. To address what Linda just said, the Sports Authority, which I'm on with Mr. Warren, we've been talking about that, and honestly, we're not married to that location. I don't think we ever were. Some new information that's going to come out by next week on our plan for the Sports Authority and who we're going to try to hire to help us. But one of the things they're going to do, they've done this all over the country, and they're going to look at what we want and where we can put it and make a recommendation. And they're going to consider all of those items that you just mentioned, not the least of which is what the people are saying they want. So there will be more on it, I suspect. Just personally, I suspect it may move somewhere else. I don't know.
Mr. Warren?
I would kind of echo that. I would always want to mention, though, that cost, not only have the construction costs ballooned, when we start talking about moving it, there's certain criteria that we're going to have to be able to meet, or it's going to cost more money. So I think that's all still up in the air. I think there will be some public meetings at some point in time where the public can see the issues that we face in construction and location, and we can hopefully all come together on something. But I think that we're all in this to make sure that we have the premier youth sports in the state of Oklahoma.
Mayor, we We anticipated as part of this Elmer Thomas master plan that this subject matter would come up and we would be discussing this again. And to be honest with you, I feel like the public input portion of that master plan would be a great opportunity, as well as if we do the special meeting to do that. We fully anticipated this was going to come up again, and in all honesty, we're prepared to bring to you whatever the recommendation that comes out of that back to you. So if that helps you any, I really feel like you were going to get another opportunity to weigh in on that decision anyway.
Okay, Michael.
Mayor, it's been my experience, and Nate, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the master planning process is a little bit of science and a little bit of art, right? So we gather information, we put together a preliminary design, right? At some point, you get to the point where you bring it back to the elected officials, we review that information, whether it's a 70 or 80% completed document, get all the input from council, hold all the public hearings and the town hall type meetings, and then formalize that plan. So as Dwayne mentioned, when we talked about the aquatics master plan and the Elmer Thomas master plan, there was consideration of those factors. What does that look like? What does that look like without the sports complex in that area? What does it look like if it were to stay? What does an aquatics master plan look like inside of Elmer Thomas Park? What do you use with the runoff water? Do you store that in catchments and then use it to create some sort of water feature, or use it to sprinkle a nice field, or whatever the case may be? But this process is intended to go slow, because sometimes it takes the government and its constituents time to absorb everything and then respond back to the council members. So I think it's a good idea that we look at what that looks like in the end, and we can solidify that Elmer Thomas master plan part then of what exactly we would like to see in that area, features, amenities, etc.
Okay, any other comments?
Yes, Mayor.
Who said yeah? Okay, go ahead.
I did have some constituents, speaking of the water features, even out at both Lee West but if you could consider, we fish at Liberty Lake at Elmer Thomas. There's people that would probably like to see some of that incorporated in the plan if it's possible.
I just wanted to weigh in on the rec center. The park is in my ward, and I really love the concept that was brought forward, but the amount of feedback that I've had, I'm not necessarily married to that anymore, but I would think we might be able to move it within the park, and there might be some consideration of that already, and not be at the site that has created as much discussion as it has. But I still think that's our premier park, and that's the location where a premier rec center ought to be. But I'm not, if somebody comes up with a better idea, I'm all for it.
Okay, I think that's about it. Last question. What's the day you're coming back with the plans?
Elmer Thomas Park, we're looking at, it's going to be about a 3-month process, so we're just getting that started. So we're early August, so we're looking at early November for that. Lawton Lakes plan, again, we still need to have these public input sessions, and so sometimes those can be a little bit drawn out, but we're shooting for kind of late fall on those.
Did I hear anything about aquatics? Are you doing aquatics?
We're working on a concept plan for the water park in Elmer Thomas Park. What the process that
Actually, what we were wanting was an aquatics master plan, was it not?
Okay.
Correct. It's not just Elmer Thomas. It's an aquatics master plan that incorporates, maybe the splash pad in Lee West or the East Side or some other neighborhood. Maybe we talked about the wading pools, whether they're historical in nature, and we need to consider that, and et cetera. So the SHPO portion of it, the aquatics master plan, all rolled into one document. Is that?
They're aware of that. We asked them to expedite a concept that we could at least bring back and give you something to look at on the Elmer Thomas potential as far as that water park.
So I
Okay.
can't give you a date on an aquatics master plan, but again, I'll work with WTI. We'll get together a scope of work and a proposal to get in front of you, and that'll determine the timeline.
Okay, so I'll expect all that back in November, okay? And we'll be ready to move forward, make some decisions. Any final comments? There's no action on this item. I think we've given direction by consensus, and we're ready to move on. You okay, council? All right. That completes our business agenda, and we move on to staff reports. Receive an update on CIP projects from Director of Engineering, Mr. Joseph Painter.
Mayor, council, let's see if we can get this to work. Look at that. Gold Boulevard. So we are still in the utility relocation process. The water line is about 60% complete. We had to pause and require some new right-of-way that we're getting right now to move a water line that we hadn't anticipated. But slowly but surely, we're making progress out there. Power companies replacing all the power poles. They are having some issues sourcing power poles, but they're getting through that too. Everything seems to take longer than you hope it should. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. The Lawrence Street drainage improvements, this was a follow-up project to help the drainage on Lawrence Street, particularly at B and Lawrence. That project is finished. The pedestrian bridge that you voted on in agreement with ODOT, the update is costs have gone way up, which is no shocker, but ODOT did agree to up their share of the part of the project, so they've increased their portion. The Admiral Orm Street projects, phase 1, are all well into construction. Quite a few of them are all but complete. We're down to punch lists on D Street. E Street is complete. 7th Street's been complete for a while. 26, Cornell, 36th Street. We are all but complete, going through a punch list, trying to finalize that project. Let's see, this one's A-Tech. Bedford Circle, 47th Street. We're about 80% complete. 24th Street, we're 60% complete. We hit a little bit of an obstacle of some unknown utilities. There was a gas line and an AT&T fiber optic line that wasn't marked, that we've kind of had to stop and pause while we got that relocated, but we've worked around it and back up moving again. Admiral Orm Phase 2, it's still in 60% design. We're in the right-of-way acquisition phase. We've got making pretty good progress. We've got all the easy acquisitions and all the medium acquisitions. Now we're down to the people that won't answer their phone or letters or doors, and trying to acquire those last temporary easements. The Leonard is complete. Probably ought to take it off slide. It's been done for a while. Lee Boulevard, our favorite project. It is absolutely our favorite project. Phase 1 is well under construction, which is the resurfacing from Goodyear down to 67th Street. Asphalt's been a bit tricky. We've had perfect asphalt lane weather, but getting our final mix just right has been a little handicap for us, but we're getting there. Our next phase will be phase 2, and we'll shortly be selecting a consultant for designing of phase 2, which will be Goodyear from Lee over to Cache. This is the resurfacing project. And a reminder, we did get a grant of almost $2 million for that. City Hall renovation, we opened our first bid packet, which is the parking lot over here where the grassy area is. Everything came in good. We'll be bringing that to you at the next council meeting. And an update on the City Hall project as a whole, where the budget stands and everything. We had our CIP programming is all but complete. Still some bugs to work out. We're using it. We'll have our first big test here in September when we do our start our next year CIP budget programming. We're going to get an early start on it, get everybody together and work through this process using our new software and tool we have here. It'll be very helpful. "38th Street to Bishop to Gore." It's at 30% design level. We've got some issues to work out with the railroad, routing sidewalks, all the usual typical stuff we need to do. Hopefully we won't have a whole lot of utility relocation to do. We're not really changing the footprint so much as just replacing what's there. Our pavement assessment program is coming along nicely. We've gathered all the data. They're crunching all the data. We had a quick look at Ferris and Sheridan, see how they compare to each other. No shock, they're both horrible. It's a toss-up of which was worse. So in our ad valorem projects, it's something we need to discuss, and we'll talk it during the budgeting process, was after 38th, is Ferris or Sheridan next? So this data that we're gathering will be greatly helpful in making those decisions. US 62 interchange, we have fleshed out the contract, had some typos that needed to be taken care of, so it'll be on your next council agenda. We recommend executing a contract with EST to start design on that. Sidewalks, our favorite topic, right? We're making good progress along Gore from 53rd over 67th, and then when they get finished with that, they'll be heading up 53rd from Gore to Cache. McMahon Auditorium, we've been a little stagnant on this project, so we've got to get it back up and running again. We have a meeting actually this Friday to see what our next stages are and get this project back up and running again. It's kind of stagnated on us a bit. We have bridges stacking up on us. We have 3 bridges now that need immediate attention. At next council meeting, we'll have a contract we recommend for you signing with Lochner Engineering to start design on these 3 separate bridges. One is the 11th Street Bridge, which you know about, that goes to the landfill. It's just aged out. I mean, we've got all the use out of it we're going to get. It just needs to be replaced. The Cache Road Bridge is an old bridge, but it is salvageable and it just needs a lot of repair. And once we get that repair done, the good news is we'll be able to increase its weight limit back up to what it was, and our fire trucks can cross it again. And then, of course, we had a bridge on 29th Street in the neighborhood that it's still standing, but as far as ratings go and structural analysis, it hit 0. So it was a complete, it's a failure, and we had to close that bridge for traffic. So it's a fairly simple replacement. We'll replace it with a precast reinforced concrete box, but it's still a little bit out of what our crews can do. So we'll put it out on the street for open bidding.
So you've got
you've got Propel identified on here. And the challenge with putting these bridges in Propel is that we've promised people Lee Boulevard, Goodyear Boulevard, and that extension. And so we've got to do what we promise people. Now, if you're talking about using Propel to initially fund the engineering so that we can get a good estimate, but then that's one thing. But I can't see how we can expect Propel to fund these bridges when we've made promises on Lee Boulevard and Goodyear.
Good point. We do hope to, there's a lot of different, we've been talking about it with everybody in the world, a lot of different grants and funds out there from everywhere in this world, it seems like. There's got to be some bridge money out there. We're pursuing several different options. You're always way farther down the road if you have your plans ready, though. They always want to know, hey, when can you go to construction? So that's what we're just going to get our plans ready to go. We know we need to shop and find some of these grants floating around to fund these projects, but we need to get some plans on the shelf, and we'll be ahead of our peers trying to get the funds too, we hope. That's the plan. With that, that's the bulk of our projects we're working on. Does anybody have any questions?
Did you tell us when the utilities will be done and when we'll be ready to bid that?
I did not.
A date
Thank you
will
for
be
catching
fine.
that.
A date will be fine.
Can I bring that back to you? I need to run some traps.
Just give me a date I can hold you to.
Yeah.
It could be general. I understand
It's going to be well into next year before we start the road.
well into next year, calendar year.
Why don't
Calendar.
you explain the struggles that we've run into with that particular portion of the road? We've relocated some of the utilities, but we've had other difficulties, right, that has prolonged the beginning of construction on that road. So there's a reason why. It's not just because we don't want to do it. There's a reason it's taken a little bit longer than we thought.
We've had issues with our consultant. We had to redesign the project from the day I touched it. So we had to go through a whole redesign and correct errors they had in it, which we did. And we've run into utilities that we didn't know were there, and we've had to relocate those. And our biggest unknown right now is why I wanted to hold off is AT&T has a major infrastructure running up and down the road that they need to relocate. And I've heard they can't get to it for a year, and then I heard a recent that they're it may be way sooner than that. So, but we can't do our road till AT&T relocates their utility, and that's.
Do we have our plans?
What's that?
Do we have the plans complete?
We are 99%. We need to have one more plan in hand with ODOT, and then we'll be complete with roadway plans.
Okay. Now, the pavement assessment, I didn't hear a completion date on that.
Larry, when was I don't remember what our due date was on. Yeah, it's pretty close. We're getting towards the end of when they're due the report and all the data to us.
30 days?
Probably 90 days.
They just completed all of the actual analysis, right? All of the driving around and scanning and LiDAR.
Data collection,
So
which is huge.
Now it'll take them some time to put all that data together to create a report that we can actually digest and use in our street analysis.
If you love spreadsheets and data, you would love this database.
Okay, so
It's
the
huge.
Goodyear extension, we're about to start the planning on the project, right?
Well, I'd like to change our expressions here. We call Goodyear extension. It's really US 62 interchange at Goodyear.
Okay, I don't know if I can get there, but go ahead.
Okay, and then we have Goodyear Boulevard improvements, which is from Lee to Cash. We're redoing the road.
Okay.
But the US 62 interchange, that we're doing at Goodyear as, we're extending Goodyear to the interchange. But the biggest part of the project is the interchange, not the extension. It's just, yeah, that's just a little bit of part of it.
Okay. That's what we're doing, is we're going to the planning for the project, the engineering for the project, right?
Plans, construction plans.
Okay.
We're past planning. We're doing
Estimated
this.
time.
Well, we're just signing the contract at the next council meeting, so this is bigger,
1 year?
at least for plans and right of way. We don't have a ton of right of way though, which is good news, but we got to find out how much utility relocation we have to do. And we've been talking to the landowners and.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Linda?
Michael, is there a way that we can get his presentation downloaded? It won't download on our.
Yeah, I noticed that too. We'll get it sent out to the council. It was attached, but for some reason it wouldn't download.
I have a real easy one. Are we on Gore, 67th to 82nd? Is that north and south sidewalks? Does Councilman Fortenbaugh and myself get one?
I vote we throw, something in the middle and you guys.
Maybe an arm wrestle or something.
Can I ask one question about the bridge and on the east side? I have real concerns because we have that area blocked off. We had that bridge completely blocked off.
Yes, sir.
So, I think that has to surely go up the chain a little bit so that we can get people back moving up and down through there. But it's totally blocked off right now. So I've had some concerns about how long will that be? And I said, I don't know. So here we are. I'm asking, how long will that be?
Well, we're hoping it's not as big a project as those other two.
Right.
So I have hope that some funds will come up once we get plans in hand and we can advertise and bid it. It's probably like a just ballpark high altitude, $500,000 construction project.
Okay.
So it's not a huge deal. But
So we think it'll be 6 months, a year? These residents want to know because that's.
We do understand the residents' concerns. There is another way in and out of the neighborhood. I understand it's an inconvenience because it's another way out. But when you start ranking these as far as severity and likelihood of failure.
I get it.
We just have to go back and identify the funding source. And once we do that, then we get the plans done and we can develop it. So 6 months, I think, is a reasonable time frame to have that at some point where we can start working on it. But I can't guarantee you all that with the number of people that we have, the shortages in staff we have in engineering, and a few other things. But it's a goal that we'll try to get to as soon as possible because we do understand it's an inconvenience.
Right. You mow parks, so surely you can put in bridges.
I can, actually.
But no, reason I'm asking is because every time we go to, and I know council does, every time I go to a neighborhood watch meeting, that's the things that I get asked, So we all get that when we go to our meetings. When is this going to happen? When's that going to happen? So that's why we need kind of some, I know I can't hold your feet to 6 months, but at least I have an answer, some sort of an answer. And I'm happy with that.
Okay. Anybody else? Great report. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? So moved. A motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Burke. Yes. Hampton. Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Warren. Hankins. Harris. Yes. Chapman.
2 weeks. So that's cool. Sunset Expression? Yeah. I never get back. I don't want that thing to burn the ground. It'll work. It'll be cooker.
All right, take care.
And we are back from executive session. Please call the roll.
Hampton, Fortenbaugh, Johnson, Warren, Hankins, Harris, Chapman, Burke.
And executive session item number 24, John?
Pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, council convened an executive session to discuss an action relating to litigation against the manufacturers and distributors of opioids in an effort to hold them accountable for their marketing practices alleged to have caused public nuisance and monetary damages suffered by municipalities, specifically the city's pending litigation in City of Lawton versus Purdue Pharma Incorporated et al., CIV 1978, as part of NRA National Prescription Opiate Litigation, MDL number 2884, to include a discussion and consideration for approval of a potential settlement with distributors Cardinal Health, McKeeson Corporation, and Amerisource Bergen Corporation. I understand there's a motion on this agenda item.
Yeah, I move to adopt a resolution to approve participation in the Distributors Oklahoma Settlement Agreement for the purpose of the city resolving its claims against certain pharmaceutical distributors, McKeeson Corporation, Cardinal Health, Inc., and Amerisource Bergen, and in doing so, one, authorize the mayor to execute the settlement participation form contained in the Distributors Oklahoma Settlement Agreement as Exhibit G. Two, approve participation in the Memorandum of Understanding regarding certain opioid litigation proceeds with the state of Oklahoma, also known as the Sharing Agreement. An addendum to a sharing agreement regarding certain opioid litigation proceeds, and further ratify its prior action of legal counsel in executing documents necessary to the city to participate in the Distribution Oklahoma Settlement Agreement, the sharing agreement, and the addendum to the sharing agreement. Three, authorize the mayor and legal counsel to take all actions required by the Distributors Oklahoma Settlement Agreement, the sharing agreement, and the addendum to the sharing agreement to effectuate the Distribution Oklahoma Settlement Agreement for the benefits of the city, including executing any documents required to finalize the participation of the city in the Distributor Oklahoma Settlement Agreement, the sharing agreement, and the amendment to the sharing agreement, and four, authorize the execution of the resolution.
Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the motion carries 8-0. Executive session item number 25. John?
Pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, council convened an executive session to discuss an action relating to litigation against the manufacturers and distributors of opioids in an effort to hold them accountable for their marketing practices alleged to have caused public nuisance and monetary damages suffered by municipalities, specifically the city's pending litigation in City of Lawton versus Purdue Pharma Incorporated et al., CIV 1975, as part of NRA National Prescription Opiate Litigation, MDL number 2884, to include a discussion and consideration for approval of potential settlement with Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, Ortho McNeil Janssen Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, and Janssen Pharmaceutica Incorporated, collectively known as Janssen. I understand there is a motion on this agenda item.
Mayor, Council, I move to adopt a resolution to approve participation in the Janssen, Oklahoma Subdivision Opioid Settlement Agreement for the purpose of the city resolving its claims against certain pharmaceutical manufacturers, distributors, Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, Ortho McNeil, Janssen Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, and Janssen Pharmaceutica Incorporated, collectively Janssen, and in doing so, one, authorize the mayor to execute the settlement participation form contained in the Janssen Oklahoma Subdivision Opioid Settlement Agreement as Exhibit C, and two, authorize legal counsel to take all action required by Exhibit C and the Janssen Oklahoma Subdivision Opioid Settlement Agreement to effectuate the Janssen Oklahoma Subdivision Opioid Settlement Agreement for the benefit of the city, and three, to authorize the execution of the resolution.
Is there a second? We've got a second. Motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries 8-0. Executive session item number 26. John?
Pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25 Oklahoma statutes, council convened an executive session to discuss an action relating to litigation against the manufacturers and distributors of opioids in an effort to hold them accountable for their marketing practices alleged to have caused public nuisance and monetary damages suffered by municipalities, specifically the city's pending litigation in City of Lawton versus Purdue Pharma Incorporated et al., CIV 1978, as part of INRAE National Prescription Opiate Litigation, MDL number 2884, to include a discussion and consideration for approval of potential settlement with Mallincroft PLC and Mallincroft LLC. I understand there is no motion on this agenda item.
Do I have a motion for adjournment? Have a motion and a second down here. I didn't get who? Okay, that was Randy Warren. Please call the roll.
Fortenbaugh. Johnson. Warren. Hankins. Harris. Chapman. Burke. Hampton.
Don't forget, everybody, next week, next Tuesday, we have a D&D meeting. Okay, it'll be prepared. It's going to be a long one. About 60 plus items. 2 o'clock.